So today I will be talking about oogenesis. I had not talked. I finished fertilization first, but I have not talked about oogenesis. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Are you people able to see the term oogenesis here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, oogenesis is the formation of egg or the ovum. This is the haploid gamete. This is the haploid gamete of female. If you people have questions, please interrupt me in between. Okay. Let's go to the last picture first. This has got two aspects. One is oogenesis, where the cellular changes take place. Along with it, another thing takes place, that is follicle development. So you see there are two aspects of oogenesis. One is the oogenesis part, and the other is the follicle development. So let us see the what happens in the follicle development. You first have a primordial follicle formed. This this part about this is before the birth, before birth. And everything after this is after birth. Especially from puberty to menopause. Say something like 10, 11, 12 years and in girls. So first the primordial follicle is formed. Inside this primordial follicle is your egg or the ovum. It is known as oogonium. The oogonium, if this is the oogonium, it is inside the primordial follicle outside. So this is the oogonium, and outside is the whole thing together is the primordial follicle. Now, during childhood, the ovary is inactive. Here the oogonium becomes the primary oocyte and meiosis starts, and it is arrested in prophase 1. So all the eggs inside the primordial follicle, all the oogonium is in the state of primary oocyte. It is arrested, cell division arrested in prophase 1 of meiosis 1. So when the oogonium, if you have 7 million oogonium coming, finally in the ridge, you will find something like 2-3 million finally arrested in the prophase 1 stage in the ovary of the child. before puberty. Then each month, one or two or three of the at least they develop something like 100 of these follicles start to develop, and out of them one of this follicle it comes for fertilization. So one egg is lost. So the number of eggs in the female is limited. The sperms is not limited. Number of sperms is not limited. The spermatogonium, as you have seen, keeps on, the spermatogonium keeps on dividing. Just hold on. প্রতিমা দরজাটা বন্ধ করে কল খুলো. So it keeps on dividing. And throughout the lifetime you have sperm development taking place, but in the case of females the number of egg is limited. So after 45 40 to 45 somebody is nearing, you have the phase where you actually start losing your ovarian reserves and menopause starts to take place. So menopause means that you are no more eggs are formed, you will not be able to give birth to a child. So till 45 or something there is chance of conceiving. After that there is no chance. Okay, you এসছে. So there is no chance. Then after birth, when puberty is attained, this freeze, this arrest, it stops, and this primary oocyte, it starts to complete meiosis. This arrest is removed and the primary follicle starts to grow. You can see the egg is inside, the cells outside cells, they are starting to form. This is the growing follicle. Then at the end of meiosis, this 2n, the diploid stage becomes n. You have the first polar body. It will die, but before it dies, it will form two more polar bodies in the next step. And one of them, this n, this secondary oocyte is formed. So this is again, this becomes haploid again. At the end of meiosis 1, complete meiosis 1, haploid at end of meiosis 1. At the same time, this follicle matures, mature follicle. This is known as the Graafian follicle. GRAA, Graafian follicle. Again, the secondary oocyte is arrested in metaphase 2 of meiosis. You have meiosis has got two phases. One is the meiosis 1 and the other is, the second is meiosis 2. Meiosis 1 is the reductional division. And meiosis 2 is similar to mitosis, it is equational. Here it becomes haploid in meiosis 1. So Meiosis 2 has got again prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. The secondary oocyte is arrested in metaphase 2. At this point, ovulation takes place. You have the fimbriae coming closer to the ovary and ovulation is taking place. It is in this particular stage. And the sperm, actually, if there is a sperm, it actually hits at this stage. This meiosis 2, this metaphase will become anaphase 2 and telophase 2, and then it will form the zygote. This will happen only if there is sperm. If there is no sperm, this stage is stopped. And if there is sperm, one of them will become 2N and the second polar body will die. And also these two polar bodies which are formed, they will also die. Clear? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You have this empty follicle. After the egg is released, this forms inside the ovary a corpus luteum. This is very important. It is important in secreting progesterone. It secretes progesterone. This progesterone is very important to keep the pregnancy intact. It thickens the endometrial walls after implantation. So at the end of a girl's period, you have tissues and blood waste being formed. That is nothing but when there is no fertilization, the endometrial wall, it becomes thickened and richly highly vascularized. So it is no longer needed. They come out. And the endometrium again becomes thin. It happens every 28 days. Theoretically, it's supposed to happen 1 or 2 days here and there. Some people have other problems, but that is okay. Nothing to be worried about. Okay. Now, let us see what happens. What are the changes which takes place in the ovary? This is the ovary. Are you able to see this picture?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So stage 1, the primary follicle, stage 1. Acha, let me tell you, I have sent you a note. There is a little bit of an error which I was absent-minded. There was another picture over here. I will send you this one. So you delete my former note because this picture which I had sent earlier, picture sent here was wrong. Was wrong. This one is right. So let's look at inside the ovary. The primary follicle. Then next stage is the growing follicle. The egg is developing inside. And outside you have the follicular cells. So if you this is the cross, the ovary is coming out. You have taken a cross section. A cross section. So this is just a section. You have cut it in this plane. One section of this. You can see the egg follicle, follicular cell. Then this becomes the mature follicle or the Graafian follicle. Ovulation takes place, egg comes here. The fimbriae is present over here. It enters into the duct and fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. And this, it forms the empty follicle forms the corpus luteum. If there is no progression, this becomes the corpus albicans and it regresses and disappears. Again, in the more primary follicles are again taken up, but you know it is limited. The numbers are limited. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is another picture of this. This is the primordial follicle. You have thecal cells outside, and then you have granulosa cells outside. So the granulosa cells are present here, and they grow. Finally, it forms this particular Graafian follicle, and this egg is released after ovulation. Main function of the granular cells is to provide nutrition to the developing eggs. So let us see. Developmentally, oogenesis, it begins immediately after fertilization. Actually, because it is in frozen. And own zygote formation. So the primordial germ cells, we are looking at a development. So you have the primordial germ cells, they migrate to the gonads, gonadal ridge. When the embryo is developing near the so-called future pelvic region, a ridge is formed. A ridge means like this. So somewhere here, all they migrate to this region. This is a genital gonadal ridge, or some people call it genital ridge, where they start dividing and proliferating mitotically, forming oogonia primordial germ cells. And they enter the gonad, which is ovary. Right now, there is no testosterone trigger. So once a testosterone trigger takes place, it starts to form into a testes, not ovaries. Otherwise, by default, it is supposed to form ovaries. Only when there is this testes determining factor coming, then it forms basically testes. Otherwise, by default, ovaries. So these germ cells, they multiply to around 7 million, around the 15th to 17th month after the fertilization, when the baby is developing. Around this time, many of them become primary oocytes. Most of them, however, die. The primary oocyte is covered by the granulosa cells and thecal cells, and it's called the primordial follicle. The primary oocyte is inside them. In the diplotin phase of the first prophase, the oocyte is arrested. This arrested state is known as dictyotin. Some of these primary oocytes, they can stay in the dictyotin stage till menopause because they have not been released yet. At puberty, 4 to 10 follicles, they began to develop, and they are known as antral follicle. Although 1 or 2 may be released as dominant follicles. Surrounding each oocyte is a zona pellucida, membrana granulosa, and thecal layer. You have seen these. These follicles express luteinizing hormone receptors. This is very important during fertilization. Each oocyte finishes its first meiotic division from puberty onwards, creating a secondary oocyte and polar body, which has got no further function. So, 4 में से potential 4N is formed. You can have 4 spawns formed here. Instead of that, you have only 1 egg is formed. So 4 sperms is to 1 egg. Immediately you can find. It begins the next cycle of meiosis, and it's arrested in the second metaphase. So in the second meiosis, metaphase 2, it is arrested until or unless a sperm comes and fertilizes it. When the sperm comes and fertilizes it, the nuclei inside this egg, it completes the meiosis. It will not complete the sec until it receives a stimulus of a sperm. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So this is basically oogenesis. It's the same thing which I have drawn over here. I will send this note once more. Ignore the former note which I had sent on oogenesis. This picture has been changed. I suddenly realized that I had once made a mistake, and that mistake thing is one which I'm being keeping on sending to everybody. Okay then. Do you people have got any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Then tomorrow, no, day after tomorrow, that is on the 7th. 7th is which day? Saturday, na?
Saturday.
Right. So the day after tomorrow, we will talk about a bit more difficult topic, that is further development, inducers and organizers, morphogen gradients. These are a bit more difficult. So do you people have any questions regarding oogenesis? It is a bit more difficult than spermatogenesis, because at different stages, oogenesis has got two aspects. One aspect is clearly the one which takes place inside the ovum, and the second aspect is which takes place inside the follicle. So two aspects takes place. Although some people can call a third aspect, and that is the one which takes place in the uterus. The uterus wall increases and decreases, but since we are concerned in developmental biology, I believe the uterus part will come during implantation. Okay. So any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Then I'm stopping the recording right now.